So guys, this is huge. Remember I had told you guys in one of my videos about the potential threat to the NNP and the NDC coming from Peter David's resignation from the NNP party and forming his own party? And remember I told you guys that he can keep his St. George's base, then he can do a three-prong approach along the western side, through the middle of the country, and through the right eastern side of the country, and then link up at the north. Then guess what? Fate has handed him a prize. Fate has handed him a gift. This is huge. You have 6 resignations from the St. Patricks West NNP constituency. So I'm guaranteeing you, and based on what they're saying, it seems to be the same justification that Peter David gave for his resignation. So guess what? I think he can find an ally in these people. So he has the North link up. He now has the North link up. Boy, oh boy, these things are unfolding quickly. I'm starting to think I have a little bit of sense. Now, I had warned you guys. You can't say I didn't warn you. I told you guys, do not disregard a potential Peter David's party. Vigilance requires that the NDC and the NNP should have a backup plan. Because if you guys don't, guess what? Peter David is coming for your food. And, none of this surprises me because I also, if you look at one of my previous videos when there was that internal struggle in the NNP party, I did predict, and I told you guys, I said, look, if Peter stays in the party, there would be hemorrhaging and there'll be problems and internal strife. And I did say, even if he leaves the party, there would also be problems. Okay? Just remember that. The damage has already been done. So none of this surprises me. What the NNP needs to do right now is to really consolidate and see who are the battle-hardened, so to speak, people within the party who understands the NNP ideals and are willing to regroup, consolidate, and they have to have a very effective plan right now to woo the Grenadian electorate. There's not much time. They have to start doing this right now if they are to be effective. Remember, the NDC has a little bit of edge because they are in government. And if you realize what is being done right now, they're about the money. And it's quite possible they can make links with people who would invest in them to protect their investments that they possibly may want to do in Grenada. It's not necessarily going to bring much to Grenada and Grenadians. So all he has to work on now is to create a chain of links along the western side, a chain of links through the middle of the country, and a chain of links along the eastern side. And then they all can link up in the north. He now has his base in the north. Now I'm telling you, Miss NDC, are you still not alarmed? I suggest you take a look at my video, Is NDC and NNP Panicking? Take a look at that and you'll get some background. And you see exactly what I said has come to pass. Since we're here, I wanted to take up the topic of what is an investor. So there it is. An investor is an individual or entity that utilizes its capital or the capital of others with the goal of receiving a return. Now keep that last part in mind. Carefully keep that last part in mind. So when a government says to you that they are bringing in investors, you've got to understand that these investors are coming to invest their capital to make a return. At least twice times. I mean, if you're in business and you're not doubling your returns, then something is wrong. So at least twice times. Some people will settle for a little less. But at that level, that sort of investment, you're at minimum trying to double. Okay? So for an investment to be profitable for Grenada and Grenadians, it means that the investor has to make their money, and at the same time, whatever concessions you gave to them is such that the taxes you collected from their businesses and the income taxes you collected from people that they employed should be in excess of the concessions that you gave to them. So, of course, it's quite possible, depending on the nature of the business that investor invests in Grenada, or using Grenada as a base. It could be a business that requires foreign operations but has a base in Grenada, or it could be a business that is actually based in Grenada and is using and producing materials based in Grenada. I mean, there are many, business models now these days. But anyway, the key is what I've just said before, that the concessions you give to that business or that investor or that startup has to be less than the income tax you get from people who are employed in the business and taxes generated from the business itself. So, for example, if you give that investor or that business startup $10 million concession, in terms of excise duties and whatever products they got to bring in and stuff like that. In terms of concessions takes many forms. So you give them 10 million totally in concessions, and they start a business and they employ Grenadians. And a lot of the times what I've realized, these business, and for good reasons, okay, they generally don't provide any higher level jobs to Grenadians. I've seen it before. I've had banking experience. I've worked in a bank over there, and I kind of sort of know how it works. And I've seen businesses that has come to Grenada. What they do is that all the higher level jobs, they will give it to their people or foreigners, and the low level jobs, as is usual, they'll give it to Grenadians. So the income tax that you're collecting from, the low level jobs, it's usually not that much. Okay? The income tax you collect from obviously higher paying salaries will be much more. And sometimes as a government in the short term, you don't recuperate that much taxes to make it profitable in the short term. I mean, let's say you give $10 million concession, it'll take a while, depending on the business, to collect enough taxes to make that investment worth the while for government. So I'm sure you have all these bright people in Grenada. You have all these economists, all these accountants, and all these, smart people. So there should be some sort of civic duty that when a government says, look, I'm bringing in investors, right? I'm bringing in investors, and this is what they're going to invest in. All these bright economists and local accountants should at least do a little bit of research, ask the relevant questions, get some bit of disclosure to see if that particular investment would be profitable for Grenada and Grenadians in the long term. So you don't end up in situations like that happened with that hotel towards the end of Grandin's Beach, and there was a bunch of issues, close to Mount Cinnamon. There was, and the government had to pay back the investor, and it was crazy. So the government basically had a loss on that one. Okay. And then if it's alleged that NNP had so many investors and there were so many problems with it, then I think at this juncture, Grenadians should do their due diligence. And podcasters and all these people should ask about these investors. So I saw a podcast, obviously we know who I'm talking about. He's an NDC hitter. And he was angry with Grenadians, and he tried to shift the fact that Grenadians was asking about the investor and these investments that the current administration is trying to secure. He was angry with Grenadians for asking questions about that. And you would think that, he should have been happy that Grenadians are, not taking this lying down especially with all the allegations of failed ventures in the past, that they should ask questions. You should be really grateful that, hey, Grenadians are aware, you know what I'm saying? They want to ask questions about potential investors. But he framed it, turned it around, because people were asking questions about this, turned this around and said that people were attacking the potential investor, which was totally not the case. People were asking questions, relevant questions, and that's a good thing, But he's trying to frame it as, they're trying to discredit the current administration and they're trying to discredit the investor. No, they weren't. People weren't ever saying anything about the investor. But that's the way he framed it. You know what I'm saying? It was all propaganda, BS propaganda, But that gentleman, if he truly cared about Grenada, he'd be happy that people are asking questions about potential investors. And people are asking questions about potential investments so that the mistakes that were made in the past is not made again. That's okay to ask questions. So I applaud Grenadians who are asking questions about these potential investors. I applaud people who wanted to get a little more info. And it should be, if these investments are legitimate and they're good for Grenada and Grenadians, then there should be public disclosure. Of course, these investments, if you think about it, are always good for the people who are trying to bring it in, especially if they're lawyers. Because in the negotiation of these investments, what you have happening sometimes, I'm not saying that is the case right now, but what you have happening, if these people are lawyers and if these people have law firms, what you have happening is that the negotiations that have to take place and the contracts that have to take place, guess what? These investors will pass that to their law firms and will pass that on to them if they're lawyers individually. So that's how they make their money. So we understand there's an incentive by them to bring in investors. But the key, as I said, is that investment or is that investor going to do good by Grenada and Grenadians? And it is a responsibility of Grenada and Grenadians to do their due diligence. Keep in mind again, I mean, these ruthless sharks internationally, these people that don't play it. I just hope and I pray that that Grenadians and the people entrusted to represent Grenada and protect Grenada have the interests of Grenada at heart. You know what I'm saying? Because these people internationally, you dealing with some seriously cunning people. These people are not, they're not jokers, okay? They know what they're doing. And again, their sole interest is protecting their capital and getting a return on their capital. So they will do whatever it takes to ensure that happens. Don't take it for granted that people who represent you would always do what is in the best interest of Grenada. I mean, they have their own personal interest too, right? So the bottom line is keep up the pressure, ask the relevant questions, be informed, have public disclosure. And, just probably as a side project, as a charitable project, all these economists and accountants, should look at the potential for these investments to actually uplift the economy of Grenada and to help Grenadians. As a personal issue, I have issues, and that's just me, in doing business with people, pretty much the historical record is clear that has sold us out to the white man. I mean, I really wouldn't want to be doing business with people who sold us out. You see what I'm saying? That's just the way I feel. And if there's any inclination that Caribbean people were sold out to the European by these people, then why would I want to do business with them? You see what I'm saying? I'll be wary of doing business with people like that. But then that's just my personal opinion. And the thing about it, they weren't sorry that we left. They weren't sorry that, that we were taken by the Europeans and brought all over the world and, and brutalized, In their society, there's no remembrance of us. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I don't know, man. People, you guys, your decisions. So let's divert a little and let's talk about the political entity that we are calling NDC. First and foremost, let me say, there is no NDC. There is no NDC. What you have is a party that was supposed to be NDC that was hijacked by NBCs. Okay? I mean, I don't know why you guys don't change the name and call it the Nation Builders Congress. There is no NDC. Does this current framework of an NDC or masquerade of an NDC party, does it hold the ideals of an NDC party? What is the political platform of this current NDC? What is it? Do we know? So in some respects, these NBCs, these nation builders, Congress, who has infiltrated the NDC, in some respects, they are no different to a Peter David. They would like to call Peter David political opportunists, and he's always looking for a home and trying to take over leadership of parties. But what did you do? What did the NBCs do to the NDC? You infiltrated and you hijacked the NDC. So you displayed political opportunism. But here you are, and especially the podcast hitters, they're going after Peter David. But it's the same thing that happened in the NDC. You had political opportunists who infiltrated, who didn't want to do the work to form their own party, so decided to hijack a party that was in crisis. So if Peter David goes about forming his own party from scratch, guess what? He's going to make the NBCs look pretty bad. Okay? Because it means that what he achieved, you guys could not have achieved. So as the old adage goes, don't throw stones when you have glass windows. And I don't think you guys have the moral high ground or the moral right to give Peter David any flack, especially these podcast hitters. You can't talk about Peter David. Did you see the maneuvering of the NBCs into the NDC? A true NDCite would have never allowed that. Never. Knowing the background of NDC and how hard the people worked to build that institution, for them to allow, like Miss Joseph and them, knowing the history of the party, and she's been there a little longer, to allow these youthful adventurers to come into the party and take over the party, boy, oh boy. Boy, oh boy. But I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. Look how Miss Joseph treats our own neighborhood, right? Our old neighborhood, right? It's amazing how all these people, after the Carnage area and the Wharf area has worked so hard, has built them up, has educated them. It's just amazing how quick they are ready to leave the Wharf behind. They didn't build homes. They didn't build their community and neighborhood. They didn't try to uplift the old community or neighborhood. They look at it as a bad disease. Like, oh my gosh, I want to get out of here. They all wanted to get out of there and turn petit bouche. They couldn't wait. They couldn't wait to leave that neighborhood and turn petit bouche. Instead of staying in their neighborhoods, rebuilding the Carnage, rebuilding the Wharf area, all of them, it's not unique to her. There are many others from the neighborhood that we educated, that we built up in sports, in education, in commerce, in fishing, just name it. The Carnage and the Wharf area is responsible for them. And a bunch of them who went to St. David's, who went to Tempe, who went to Mount Parnassus, who went all over the place, but did not stay and help revitalize and build the Carnage, or bought a home around the neighborhood. None of them. Why? So it's not surprise, that they would let youthful adventurers to just come into the NDC and overrun it. Because they do not believe in preserving what they have. They do not believe in working hard to build what they have. They do not believe in giving back to what molded them. That's too difficult. They want to forget about it. And you look at that place, such a beautiful place, and you see how it has descended. You could see the decadence that it has descended into. And I keep saying, I said it in a video before about the beauty of that harbor. But when you have people who, we help to grow, and they turn around and they turn their backs on us, what are you going to have? Who's going to build it? They all want to move to they all want to move to Fort Judy and Westerhall and Lansopine and Mount Parnassus and St. Paul's. They don't want to stay around the carnage. After all we did for them. They don't want to build it up. So I'm not surprised. Okay, so I see that Mr. Willie Joseph is not letting up on Peter, right? He's all philosophical about him, And I'll have you know, Mr. Willie Joseph, he may not remember, but spent a lot of time on Green Street. The gentleman spent a lot of time on Green Street. Okay? So another man from the wharf area. So he's definitely on a war path, and he's, laying down heavy verbal political fire on Mr. David. But I heard a little piece from him today, and he was going in again. But as I said, I'm not going to get involved. I don't know, there must be a reason. And I understand, I listen to some of what he's saying. And again, in some respects, he's, his aim, as he puts it, is to try to protect the youth, because there's a lot of people who don't understand the whole history. You see what I'm saying? So I can understand why he feels the way he feels, And in some respect, Peter hasn't shown some redemption. He hasn't entirely shown some sort of redemption. Hopefully with his new party, he will, abandon all the old, socialist Marxists and, head in the right direction for his good and for the good of Grenada.